I'm here today with our student, Myra. Hola, Myra.
Hola, hola, Peter. ¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien, ¿cómo estás tú?
Oh, estoy muy bien.
¿Dónde estás?
Gracias. Estoy en Guadalajara.
Excelente. ¿Qué estás haciendo en México, en Guadalajara?
Yo me mudé a Guadalajara en enero y estoy jubilada Guadalajara es una gran ciudad con mucha cultura.
¿Qué te gusta hacer en Guadalajara? ¿Te gusta
Um,
ir a los museos? ¿Te gusta ir al teatro?
sí,
Caminar, dar un paseo? ¿Qué te gusta hacer?
todas las cosas. Yo camino cada día. Me gustan mucho los fuentes,
¿Y la arquitectura?
arquitectura. Y yo fui a Teatro de Gallardo a ver la ballet de Jalisco.
Wow, impresionante.
Sí,
Ok,
sí.
ok. Entonces estás disfrutando tu
Oh,
vida.
oh, mucho, mucho. Y los boletos son baratos. Yo vivo cerca del MUSA. MUSA es el Museo de la Universidad de Guadalajara.
Y obviamente, obviously, your Spanish is great. You're speaking conversational Spanish. You're talking about your life. You're being able to immerse, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, let's share with everybody kind of your story and your journey, how you got here. Where was your Spanish before you started working with me and our coaches?
Okay, I moved to Mexico on October 31st, Halloween of 2020. I knew that speaking Spanish was my highest priority after staying healthy. I could only say words left over from high school, which I think I failed Spanish or I didn't do well. So I had words, the words that probably every American knows, amigo. And I mean, so maybe I had 20 words, but I had no ability to speak.
You were basically starting from scratch.
I was basically starting from zero. And because that was my primary goal was to learn to speak, I really dove in. I did homework every day and I progressed rapidly. I mean, according to the teachers, according to other people telling me, I'm not sure I knew that in the beginning, but I progressed rapidly. And I was living in a small town on the coast of Nayarit, La Penita de Jaltemba. And the beautiful thing about living here was that I just would walk out my door and there was Spanish, right? I didn't have to look for it. And I will tell you, I made a commitment that I thought in hindsight was really important that I made this choice. I decided when I opened my mouth, I was going to say something in Spanish first. That little commitment made a big difference because it set me on a sort of a mental plane of like, I have to start with, even if it was just buenos dias. I mean, it was just always Spanish. And so that really served me well, that sort of mindset.
You had, I would say, the ideal mindset to learning. You sort of put your shyness to the side or embarrassment. You didn't mind getting in there and making mistakes.
I do remember early on, and you'll remember I told you this in the beginning, I was learning just phrases, right? In the very beginning. And I remember I wanted to use them out on the street. And so one day I was walking by an older gentleman and we made eye contact. I said, basically, God bless you. Que Dios te bendiga. And he looked at me and his face like lit up. That little shy moment, it really made me feel like, all right, that was really worth it. I was trying. And so people, they just would help me. Maybe they'd even laugh a little bit, but I would laugh with them because it's sort of the way in, it doesn't take a lot to get under somebody's skin to where they want to cheer you on.
I think that's the biggest takeaway. When they notice that you're taking an extra step, they'll take an extra step to help you. They'll be excited in a way that should motivate and will motivate you. Success breeds more happiness, more motivation, more success. So it's
right.
It's a cycle. So you get into it, but the first step is the hardest step. That's an awesome tip. And then you did progress really, really quickly. How long would you say it took you before you felt like, hey, I can start having some conversations.
Well, I would say that between 7 and 10 months, where I could start putting multiple sentences, and things really,
Opened up.
yeah, they really opened up.
Yeah.
They really opened up.
Floodgates open. Now, how would you describe your Spanish level today compared to when you started?
I am definitely able to converse. I am conversational. I speak in full sentences. I conjugate verbs.
You feel like you can pretty much go up to anyone and just talk about anything. And if there's something you're not, maybe a word or something you're not sure of, you can find a way to figure it out.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. I was in the waiting room of a medical facility, and they had a movie on the TV, and it was a zombie movie. And so there's a bunch of people sitting there, and a young woman and I made eye contact. And so I kind of looked at the screen and I said something about zombies. And so we had a little conversation about
zombies,
about how we didn't think that this was the best show.
Isn't that great?
For the waiting room. And so she actually got up and changed the channel after our conversation. And I wasn't sure how to say zombie. It turns out it's zombie.
That's exactly what, when we talk about conversational Spanish, that's not a conversation you could have prepared for, right?
For sure.
Like, we never thought, oh, I'm going to talk about zombie TV shows today, right? But conversational Spanish is where you move from memorizing to improvising. And
yes, a very good point.
And in order to improvise, you need different tools. And what 99% of Spanish learners get in their tutors, high schools, community colleges, and immersion schools is they get a lot of words and phrases to memorize that are useful for surviving, but they don't get that structure that's useful for improvising.
Right.
And what you have are 200 verbs, 8 verb tenses, lots of vocabulary, and the little glue words. And you using those tools, you can talk about a zombie movie, and maybe there's a word like zombie you don't know, but using those tools, you can figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's what conversational Spanish is. And
the nice thing is that I see this woman a lot. So in a sense, now we're like friends, now we see each other, and she asks me how I am and I ask her, and so it's a lovely introduction into just feeling more connected to the people. So I'm not sitting alone in a waiting room with strangers. Now I'm sitting there with a woman. Yeah. We agree that zombies are really not our cup of tea.
That sounds so simple, but it's such a life-changing reality.
It is. It's actually quite profound, and it happens gradually. There's a line, how did you go bankrupt? Gradually, then suddenly.
That's nice. It's
F. Scott. Like I think it's an F. Scott Fitzgerald novel, and that's how it was for Spanish. It was like gradually, then suddenly.
Only the difference is in this case, it's a good change suddenly, not a bad change.
Yes. No bankruptcy here. Just learning to speak.
So you get to conversational. Share one or two of your favorite wow moments that you've had.
I love popcorn, and I have a popcorn lady. She's a few blocks from where I live. She has a little tienda. So I've been buying popcorn from her for months now, and we have little conversations. Recently, I told her about a physical issue that I was having. We just connected over this, because she wanted me to be well, and she asked me how I'm doing, and I said, so much better. She brought out a picture of her sister who had sadly died, but she wanted to show it to me, and she gave me a kiss and told me, and now every time we see each other, it's like a family reunion. It's like we just have this really sweet, special relationship.
That's moving from being an outsider and this sort of foreigner who's just kind of here spending money into a friend. Most tourists would kind of just dismiss, she's just the popcorn lady. I'm just here to buy something.
Right.
And Mexico, way more than the United States, is about relationships. And
clearly.
And United States, business is business. If I buy popcorn, I buy popcorn. But in Mexico, it's really community. That is a huge part of the culture. And that's what you're doing. You're doing what is kind of the way in Mexico is get to know your neighbors. And that includes the person selling the popcorn. Conversational Spanish has now allowed you to be a part of her, community, and she's part of yours.
It makes all the difference in the world. It makes
It's a different Mexico. It's a different reality.
I live here. This is what I wanted to create here, and this is what I'm creating, and that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's an incredible thing. You did have one kind of big test of Spanish. Tell us about kind of the interview you had to do.
Oh, yeah. So when I first got to La Penita, I was recommended to a woman who would help me get my residency. She did all my paperwork. We spoke in English. She even took me to the immigration office because I at that point could not have gone there alone. Well, a year later, I had to pay up another year of my residency. And I went to her. This time we spoke only in Spanish. And then I went myself to immigration because I felt that I didn't need somebody to speak for me. It was amazing. I mean, I did really well. I joked with the guys who checked me in, and it was all in Spanish, and I renewed my residency for another year. And it was so clear from one, and she just was blown away. She just kept saying, "I can't believe you're speaking to me. All you've learned." Same person. A year later, not even a year later, she just was really impressed, and that, of course, made me feel like $1 million.
And legal documents, government, doesn't get a lot harder than that. So that's immersion. If you want to talk immersion, that's immersion. That must give you confidence to just be self-independent, to self-sufficient as a single person living in a foreign country. That confidence must be huge.
Well, it is. And when I walk out of my door every day, I know there is nothing that could happen to me that I wouldn't be able to handle, that I wouldn't be able to get help. Like, I have complete confidence in my ability to handle situations. If I didn't have that confidence, I probably would never leave the house.
To be a self-sufficient person, language is on the top of the list of what you need in a foreign country. Otherwise, you're sheltered in your little English enclaves. It's like, yeah, sure, you're in the country of Mexico, but you're not in Mexico. And you're missing everything.
Yes. I moved to Mexico to retire. I had to learn to speak Spanish.
I know people looking, they don't even believe it's possible. And it is.
It is.
Don't worry about your age. Don't worry if you're academic. Don't worry about what you did or didn't do. Just have your doubts and do it anyway.
Exactly. Take them with you. Don't try to get rid of the doubts.
Have your doubts.
That's not going to work. Just go. Yeah. And I'll tell you, you will amaze yourself. You will surprise yourself. You will delight yourself. I guarantee it. I guarantee it.
That's a beautiful thing. Awesome. Well, I'll just take a minute to let anyone know who's watching this. Guys, if you want to achieve results like Myra, if you want to have these kind of experiences, if you want to have this kind of experience living in Mexico and not just being physically there, but immersing and being a part of the community, send a message. Comment. My team and I, we do this every day. We're working with students from 0 to fluency, but conversational Spanish is the biggest goal. That's the goal where your life really changes. And we're doing this every single day. So send a message. We'll look at your goals. We'll look at where you're at, and we'll come up with a plan to get you there. And so gracias, Myra. Thank you, Myra. Hasta la próxima. Until the next one. Heading towards fluency on the long-term goal.
Oh, and I just tell you, as you said that, I got like goosebumps on my neck to the anticipation and excitement of actually, being fluent some days, and so that was a good, yeah.
That's real. That's right. So, all right. Well, muchas gracias. And we will see you in class.
All right. Thanks, Pete. Adios. Hasta luego.